leading a new generation of Republican. This is the Grand New Party Update.
This past Saturday, President Obama acknowledged that standardized testing was becoming excessive in the United States and that the federal government was going to work with states, school districts, teachers, and parents to make sure that, quote, we're not obsessed with testing. He further recommended that standardized tests be no more than 2% of the students' instruction time in the classroom. According to USA Today, the average amount of time spent with standardized tests for the 8th grade, which is the grade with the highest mandate, was 2.3%. So not much of a drop in the amount of time that's being mandated for standardized testing, Dennis.
Right. Now, I remember standardized testing in school. That was when they gave you really crappy snacks that you never actually ate because they were disgusting, and you try to make a picture out of the bubbles.
What type of standardized tests were you taking?
The one where we got to not be in math class for a half hour or something like that.
Oh, I remember what you're talking about. Yeah, when they basically spent the entire day doing nothing but those tests.
Yeah. Sitting in the library, take these tests, take them very seriously. What high school students are taking these tests seriously? Give me a break. They're high school students. They don't take anything seriously.
Right.
They think what's happening in their everyday life is the most important thing on the planet.
Anything before junior high, all they're thinking is, when do I get to recess, and then when do I get home? And junior high and high school, it's kind of like, sticking up to the adults. And then, of course, you had the nerds or the geeks who absolutely loved testing and what they learned about.
Yeah, those guys, they had to pull away for the entire school. And sadly, a majority of students are not like that.
I will say it's actually a breath of fresh air from the Obama administration to admit that standardized testing has become excessive and that the United States and the federal government was going in the wrong direction. Then again, at the same time, he's not admitting that the federal government has caused this problem, and he's not recognizing the fact that there are multiple ways to teach kids. And that's okay if the states try their own ways. We don't have to have a federal standard, and constitutionally, we shouldn't have a federal standard. So it's kind of a step in the right direction, but still denial of reality.
It's great for the upcoming election for anyone who's going to be going up against Hillary Clinton, because as we know, Clinton is a big Common Core supporter. So as long as we don't elect someone like Jeb Bush and we elect a real conservative, they'll come out strong against standardized testing and Common Core, and I think that's a winning thing. I think a lot of people are fed up with Common Core, especially some of the questions they ask. We were looking at one of the math problems, and I went through college algebra and pre-calc and all this stuff, and it's like, I don't understand this Common Core stuff.
Right. And it's not just Common Core. I mean, you brought up Jeb Bush because he's a Common Core supporter, but let's not forget the fact that Jeb Bush's brother George was the one to put in No Child Left Behind. And that was a big step towards the way. And I think if we look at education since the Department of Education came about, if we look at the quality of education, I would argue that the quality of education has been going down as the federal government gets more involved. Because when you politicize these issues, it's no longer a case of educating the kids. It's also a case of educating the kids and being politically, being the political winner. So now there's incentives to make testing easier, to get those higher grade scores, so you could say, oh yeah, look at me, I'm a better politician, I'm the one that's teaching the kids more, even though they're learning less, to score higher grades.
Right. And, but yeah, when it comes to this Common Core, No Child Left Behind, anytime the federal government gets involved in something, they ruin it. They absolutely ruin it. What the people of New Hampshire's kids are learning should be taught differently than what the people of California's kids are learning. We learn differently. You can't sit down 30, 15, however many kids you want. You can't sit them in a room and expect them all to learn the same way. And now if they don't learn the same way, if they can't sit down still and learn this Common Core thing, well, they have ADHD, and let's chalk them full of pills and just pill them out until they're ready to just be a zombie and accept Common Core. No, that's not how this kid works. This kid works differently. He learns differently.
I think there's also the case to be made that not only do kids learn differently, so different educational systems benefit different people, but also when you have a 50-state system where all 50 states are trying different things, states can look at other states' educational systems and learn from each other to find what best works for them. So you have a much more innovative system because what doesn't work ends up being abandoned by states over time, and what does work for other states will be adopted by states over time. So I think when you look at the bigger picture, there's no reason for the federal government to be involved in your classroom or even in the way the parents are bringing up kids.
No, absolutely. This idea that, to teach the kids are part of the school system, they're not part of the family, that the school system has more of a right to control what happens in this kid's life than the parents do. That's just wrong. And then if you break it down, you even break it down to state level, I believe that school choice is the best way to go forward. Make it a competition. If I live in the south side of Nashville, and I know Nashville North has a better science program, why can't I send my kids to Nashville North? I mean, that's just not fair. Think vocational schools. Like, my mom did not go to the regular high school. She went to Shawshene Tech, and that was an option for her. And same with my dad. My dad's now a master plumber because of some of the stuff he learned when he was in high school. You don't get kids coming out of school now with actual skills. You get kids coming out of school with, basic mathematics and stuff like that, and then they go to college, and they learn the same crap, and then when they get into the real world, they can't find jobs. They don't have real skills. They can't make anything. Like, my biggest regret now is the fact that I don't know how to fix broken pipes. I should. My dad's a master plumber. I can't do any of that stuff.
A big part of this is also the parental involvement in education. I grew up in a family that was very history, philosophy, news-oriented. Both my parents talked about the news and history almost on a daily basis with myself and my two sisters, and you could definitely see the influence. Both my older sisters got into history majors when they went to college, and I thought about doing that. I ended up going into radio because I wanted to pursue something a little more contemporary. I wanted to get into talk radio, but it was still because of the social science aspect, the love of social science that my parents instilled in me. And I think a lot of parents today, and this is not to say anything about any particular parents, but a lot of parents today, they get home from work, they're understandably exhausted, and they just don't want to deal with it. And unfortunately, that's something that you have to deal with parenting. I mean, spending the time with your kid and engaging them to use their brain is as important as when you get home and there's a baby waiting for you and you need to, change the diapers or sit that kid down for sleep. Even though you've had a long day of work, it's your turn to do that. It's extremely important to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. The best thing my mom ever did growing up with us was powwows. Right after dinner, right before bed, she'd sit down with me and my two brothers, and we'd have powwows. And we'd just talk about how the day was. What did we learn? What happened? And we would just discuss these things. I mean, that lasted up until my parents got a divorce, and my mom had to work all the time to feed 3 kids. But that was a great thing. I can't wait because me and my fiance we already talked at length about things how we want to bring our kids up. We both want our kids to go to private school. We both to avoid things like Common Core standardized testing. We both want to have that moment with our kids on a daily basis where we just sit and discuss how their day was and what's going on in their world and be a part of that.
I think at the end of this, the major moral lesson is that standardized testing and central control and federal control can't save kids. What saves kids are teachers. What saves kids are family. It's the personal connections, the personal engagement, the personal lessons that really saves kids. And because of that, you can never fix our educational system from the federal tier because it's the furthest removed from that personal connections kids have growing up.
Yeah, I'll never agree with the statement that someone in D.C., a professor in D.C., can teach a kid better than its own parents. I always side with the parents. And I think homeschooling is a great option for families who can homeschool. I think that's the best option. I don't see me and Christina having that ability to homeschool. I mean, she is a teacher, so if I ever make it richer, she could stay home and teach the kids. I know that's not her attitude, though. She wants to work, and she wants to make an income on her own because she's not lazy. And I'm not saying homeschool parents are lazy. I have a lot of respect for homeschool parents because they put in so much effort into their kids' lives, but there are too many parents nowadays who are hands-off with their kids. And I hear stories about it coming from the education system, and it's just so evident. It's so evident. And I think you would fix a lot of social problems if parents had more say into their kids' lives. I don't think we'd have as many school shootings, and I don't think we'd have as many overdoses here in New Hampshire if parents had more say in their kids' lives.
Now, finally, I want to get to the dropout of the week.
Dun-dun-dun.
Now, what are you planning on doing for dropout of the week? You sticking with Pataki?
I'm sticking with Pataki. I don't understand. I don't even how. I always hear, well, when's Rand going to drop out? When are you going to start asking when half of these candidates are going to drop out? Jeb Bush just cut all his staffers' pay. When are you going to point that out? Rand Paul ain't doing that. Why are you asking about Rand Paul dropping out? Focus on these other guys. But I'm going to stick with George Pataki because still no commercials, still no one's talking about him in the polls, and still nothing.
Rand Paul's about halfway in the pack, by the way. He's right in the middle, so he isn't somebody who I would pick to be the first dropout. I'm going to change. I've been with Lindsey Graham this entire time, but I'm actually changing. And you know why, Dennis?
Why?
Because I watched the second-tier debate with CNN, and I had a revelation this past weekend while reviewing that. I think Lindsey Graham isn't actually running for president.
You don't say.
I don't think Lindsey Graham is running for president. I mean, I'm sure some part of him is absolutely like, oh, if this takes off, I'll be president. But I think based off of the way he directs every answer to ISIS, or as he says, ISIL, I think he's simply trying to make ISIS one of the major issues of the campaign. I think that's his primary goal. So if that's the case, I don't think he's going to drop out. I think he's going to stay in as long as possible just to promote that issue as much as possible. So I'm going to... Go ahead.
I like that. Yeah, I like that analogy of what he's doing.
So I think the next person to drop out is going to be Bobby Jindal. I'm going to switch to Bobby.
So we're both picking governors.
Yes.
Former governors.
I think that, and I think that after this upcoming week's debate on CNBC, I think what's going to happen is the candidates are going to wait a little bit to see what the polls do, and then you're going to have that mass exodus at the beginning of November.
Possibility. Now, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because, I know you are close with people who are big supporters of Carly Fiorina.
Yes.
No one's talking about her.
She has
had
dropped
a great debate. She has 2 great debates. Now, is she just going to hope the debates keep her up in the top 3 or in the top 4? Or is she just going to realize that she needs to do more?
I think what's going to happen is, and I couldn't say what her campaign's planning. This is complete speculation on my part. I think what's going to happen is she's going to see what happens after this debate. And then if she pops up in the polls again because of another strong showing, I think she's going to start really ramping up the campaign effort. I think everybody who's experienced is going to ramp up their campaign efforts going through November and December. I know the Rand Paul campaign recently announced that they're doing the 100-day initiative, and they want to push really hard for the 100 days heading into the first votes at Iowa and New Hampshire. So this is going to be something that we see from all the candidates. They're all about to start pushing really hard through November and December because they want to be the one that peaks right before or right during those first 2 primaries and elections.
Speaking about Rand Paul, he actually just dropped a new commercial here in New Hampshire.
So there you have it.
There you go.
They're pushing hard. All right, Dennis, thank you very much, and I will talk to you on Thursday.
You enjoy your little weekend.
My weekend, my Tuesday, Wednesday weekend.
Yeah.
Grand New Party Update is the intellectual property of Tony Zor and Dennis Rose. Voice of credits provided by Gino Devaney. Theme music, Namaste, by Jason Shaw, as discovered off freemusicarchive.org on the album Tech Urban Dance.